Hattie Kauffman. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. We appreciate it.
I'm happy to be here.
Do you get as much enjoyment and passion with your artwork as you did maybe as a network correspondent for all those years?
It's much more enriching, and it's less stressful. Being a network correspondent, even starting out in local TV news, it was just like you had to work so hard all the time to be available in order to get on the air. And then at the network level, you never knew where you're going to be that day or next week or anything. You wake up and you could be sent to the North Pole, as I was one day, or sent to, I had moved to LA, and then they sent me to Florida for the Alien Gonzalez story. Remember the little boy from Cuba?
Mm-hmm. Cuba, right.
I didn't come back home for weeks. So you never knew from day to day what you were going to be doing. And painting, this is much less stressful.
Yeah.
And,
so you did assignment reporting. So they would send you places as opposed to being at a bureau somewhere?
Yeah, no, I was sent all over the place.
Okay, so you didn't work at a...
when I first went to the networks, I was at Good Morning America. And so at Good Morning America, I was a special correspondent for America. I mean,
right.
I didn't have a particular beat, so I could be sent anywhere at any time. In fact, that was the day I remember I had jogged in Central Park around the little reservoir, and I went to work and I was in a happy mood. And I remember saying to somebody, I feel like I'm on top of the world. And he said, good, because that's where you're going. That was when I
that's
went to the North Pole to do a story about the first woman who was trying to solo dog mush to the North Pole. So we followed her for, I don't know how many days, but that's just an example of how I never knew where I might be or for how long.
It would be hard to plan your life, because you just got to be, you're on call all the time.
And when I did that for 25 years, I was at CBS 22 years and 3 years at Good Morning America. So that's a quarter of a century of always being like this. One time I got a call at 2 a.m. in LA to say, we want you at the fires in Malibu live, East Coast live for the show starting at 7 a.m. East Coast. But that's 4 a.m. my time. So you spring out of bed at 2 a.m. You have 2 hours to find the fire, get up, meet the crew that's up there, try to put on some makeup when you're at a red light, stopping along Sunset Boulevard or something, and then passing the police that have closed the streets, and you're going into where they've evacuated people out of. Constant stress for a long time. So yeah, it's taken me a little while to decompress and pick up a paintbrush.
Right.
I'm kind of happy right now.
I want to step back a little bit since we started talking about this. Your career. First of all, you grew up where? Tell us about where Hattie Kauffman was born, raised, and how that influenced her life.
Born in Idaho, member of the Nez Perce tribe, one of 7 kids, the big Kauffman family. And we were, a lot of us have become somewhat known in the Seattle area market.
Right. Bunch of achievers. You guys are all over.
Yeah. A bunch of achievers, but we started off as a bunch of hungry, skinny kids. Yeah. And we were in the projects in High Point when we moved off the reservation to Seattle. And, my parents, my mom is Native American, our dad's white. They actually went through a divorce and then got back together. But as little kids, we were just kind of scared and hungry, and they were, fighting and whatever. But I don't want to talk about how terrible that was, because what actually came out of it was some really real strength. And they did get back together, and they did, commit to family. So that's an important thing. Yeah. I don't want to do the violence of poor hungry child, but the poor hungry child actually led to, I think, the work ethic and perhaps the ability to thrive in a chaotic lifestyle like news. You never know with news. And in my childhood, there were a number of years where you never knew. Yeah. So you had to be able to dance and adapt and achieve.
I think adversity can help you along the way, particularly when you have some difficult times and things like that. How did you find your way into broadcast journalism?
That started in, I went to college in Minneapolis, University of Minnesota, and I went on the radio there. So it started at, on the radio, they had started this thing of 5 minutes a day that they called Indian news, which is kind of funny because you wouldn't see that today. Now let's go to our black news, or let's go to our, at the end of every broadcast. But a lot was happening. I'm old, so I was in college in the early 70s, and in the early 70s, you might remember American Indian movement, takeover of Wounded Knee, takeover of Alcatraz, the takeover of Fort Lawton, closer to home. But the real headquarters for the American Indian movement was in Minneapolis, St. Paul. So the radio came to our Native American student group and said, we'd like to give 5 minutes a day for Native, or they didn't call it Native American news, it was Indian news. And I was just a freshman, but I got so excited and I raised my hand, and I got the job. And I was then interviewing, Dennis Banks, who would later be sought by the FBI. And I was covering all of this. So that's how it started, being on the radio. And then I applied for an internship at WCCO, which was the CBS affiliate. So that started in Minneapolis early. And then when I moved to Seattle in about 80, 81, Bernie Whitebear actually is the one who put me in touch with King. And King 5 News was just starting a minorities in broadcasting, wasn't an apprenticeship, but there's a 1 year maybe fellowship or assignment or something. For 1 year, you could be trained. And I had such a huge, this is embarrassing to admit, but I didn't tell my family that I have a 1 year job, and I'm a reporter. And then as the year came to an end, I realized I'm going to have to admit that this was a 1 year job. And I had been kind of big-headed and ego-filled, thinking I had a real career. And it's coming up, and on the very last day, they offered me a job as a reporter. So
I remember that because I was at King at the same time. And if you want to talk about old, Matt and I are older than you. And Bernie Whitebear, United Indians of All Tribes Foundation, and he was part of the Gang of Four. I know that he was one of the guys that was really pushing you hard. I remember
exactly.
Yeah, you said one time that you used to do when they had the salmon dinners, and you kind of played the native Vanna White when they were, because you were the MC for some of their things.
I was the MC.
Yeah. I remember all that. But here's what I most remember about you is that you were one hard worker. That I remember walking through the newsroom one day, and they needed somebody to go produce a live shot. And Hattie, are you available? And yeah, I'll do it. And that's the one thing I think that helped you make your way, because everybody knew that Hattie was a hard worker.
It's true. And I worked holidays, and I worked, overnights, and I did a double shift. And part of it was just trying to get on TV,
From King 5 in Seattle, Hattie Kauffman.
Because there are more reporters than there are minutes in the half an hour. So you get on by always raising your hand and saying, I'll do it and I'll be there. And, eventually it worked. And eventually somebody saw my work. From King, CNN got some of my stories. NBC did as well, the Today Show. I was thinking about that this morning. I've been on NBC, CBS, and ABC in terms of a story of mine, or multiple stories. All three of the big three.
So at the time you started, how many Native people were in the news business, let alone on the air?
Actually, in Seattle, one of the very first Natives to ever be a reporter locally was Tana Beebe, and she was on when I was still a kid. I remember seeing her doing a stand-up somewhere downtown Seattle. And in our family, we all knew she was Native. And then when I went away to college in Minneapolis, there was one guy on TV there, Tom Beaver was his name, and he was on WCCO. And everybody, all the Native community knew he was Native. And so I went, when I came back to Seattle, it's kind of funny. I was going through a divorce, and my married last name was Wing. So I was Hattie Wing when I applied. And then I was Hattie Kauffman, and there was one executive that said, "We so wish you would have stayed with Wing." It would have satisfied so many communities. And I was thinking, but anyway, so that was a little aside. But I went to the network. It turns out I was the only one at the network level. And I had not even a clue. I didn't know that. I was just showing up and doing the work and doing, let's see, I was hired in 87, and it wasn't until 89 that I found out that I was the only one. And that was, are you familiar with the Newseum? Used to be a museum in DC that was dedicated to news. Well, it was opening at that time, and they had, or shortly after that, and somebody from the Newseum contacted me and said they would like to do a little, they'd like to have me in their exhibit of firsts, because they had first African-American, first, whatever it might be, first to become a network news correspondent. And they told me I was the first. And I had no idea, because, I'm just showing up and doing the job.
I think that's true for a lot of people of color in the business at that time. You're just working.
Yeah.
And it's only later when you reflect and you go like, hey, there's no one that looks like me around here, but you just keep working.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
you keep
kind
working,
of a weird...
and also, yeah, but I also really took it to heart, the lessons of journalism school, to be an unbiased witness of events. And so I didn't actually go into any coverage thinking I'm a native covering this. All I am is, what I'm supposed to be is an impartial witness. This happened. And then I turn around and I tell America, or whoever is on the other side of that camera, this happened. And whether it's, I just remember covering once, I was covering the fishing wars in Washington State. And I don't know if you remember this, it was with
the Bolt decision, right?
After the Bolt decision or something. So there was a whole bunch of things. There were a lot of natives getting arrested in the Nisqually River. It was Willie Frank, Willie Frank Jr.
Before Willie,
so, yeah. So it was old school, a long time ago. And I went to Westport to interview the fishermen, the commercial or sports fishermen, who had an opinion on this, and they were very anti the Native American tribal fishing rights. And I'm interviewing this guy, and he's saying, those damn Indians, and it was like, I've got to write this down, because I have to get his soundbite and not be, I'm not supposed to be representing an interest. I'm just supposed to be getting both sides of the story. And then in the mid, after he was talking to me for a while, he kind of looked at me like, and he said, "Are you Lori Matsukawa?"
Oh my gosh.
So, he may have caught himself that he might be talking to a Native American. I don't know. Anyway, it's funny.
No, we don't all look alike, but that's a classic moment. That's a very classic moment. Well, in a situation like that, did you get angry at all? Or did you just think, okay, I got to do my job and that's it? I don't know. I personally would be
no, it stuck with me. You can get angry later while you're writing, while you're writing in the car home, but while you're writing the story, you're not to be angry, because you're going to get that guy's viewpoint, this person's viewpoint. And, that's the thing about journalism today. And I hesitate to even go there, but it doesn't seem to be as objective as it was. And this might be like the typical old person viewpoint, like in my day, that kind of thing. But, I really tried to go into every single situation as a, just like, here's my notepad and let me write down. And, because I got used to interviewing both sides of all kinds of issues all over America, not necessarily just about people of color, but whatever it might be. Yeah. And to try to listen to each person and to try to present their viewpoint. It's a good question. I think I might have, later you think about it. Obviously, it made an impact. I'm, decades later, and I'm telling you the story.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
How do you forget that? I don't think you can forget it. During the time that you worked at the network level, and congratulations, actually, for being that first Native person at the network level. That's a hell of an accomplishment, really. After all these years, it is.
Yeah.
But was there one particular story that really stood out for you is either a high or maybe a low? Because you really covered a range, let's face it.
I covered I did. I covered so many things.
Didn't you cover
there's
John
an interview
Kennedy's?
That stood out. Can I tell you? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I don't know that it was a story, but there was an interview that stood out for me. And it was with Carlos Santana, because everybody said, he smokes so much, he's going to talk about this like vague, he loses his train of thought and goes on. And so I went to San Rafael, California, which is where his studio was. And we sit down and start to talk. And he said, I asked him about his childhood, and he said he used to sell chiclets and would go up to cars at the border and, and try to sell chiclets, there's little gum. Yeah. And it was his dad who played the guitar. And one time his dad was sick, and he went out with the guitar, and he got more pesos or cents or whatever given to him. And that's how it started. And I just felt a real connection with him. And that's, maybe because of my poor childhood, but he had this poor childhood. And then he talked about how he had it had taken him a long time to come to terms with the feelings about that and the anger. And so I ended up connecting with him as a human being. And when you're doing a celebrity interview, that doesn't happen very often, because usually they're selling something, my latest movie, whatever. But to be able to connect, and that stands out for me, and that I recall deeply, because I felt a human connection with Carlos Santana.
yeah, that's great. I understand that you covered John Kennedy Jr., the search for his plane after that happened. Did you cover that?
Yeah. It's a real bizarre kind of moment. I happened to be going on vacation for a week. I was working for CBS, and I was based in New York, but I was going to fly out to visit my daughter, who was out on the West Coast. And for some reason, I had been in Boston the night before I'm going to fly to the West Coast. And I'm in my hotel room, and I wake up, and I get room service, and I turn on the TV on CNN, and they're just saying, we're getting word that John F. Kennedy Jr.'s plane has just, has vanished. And I went through like maybe 15 seconds, 30 seconds of, do I call work and tell them I'm in Boston, or do I just sneak to Logan Airport and fly to the West Coast because I'm supposed to be on vacation? But it was one of those things where, and anybody who works in news knows that when news happens, you have to say, I'm here, I'm ready to go. It'd been my whole lifelong thing of working hard and trying to get the story and be there. So even though it was a fraction, was less than a minute of my wrestling with this, I picked up the phone and I called New York and said, I'm in Boston. And the guy on the phone said, we've got a correspondent in Boston. And so even through the little phone receiver, I knew they're all going crazy in New York. And this was a Saturday morning. So, not very staffed. And they said, get to Hannesport and get to the Kennedy family compound. And so I'm running down, I don't even have a rental car. And I had to get a rental car, and I had to, and this was pre GPS, we don't have smartphones. They don't have Anyway, so I'm trying to get there. I'm really, really asking directions. Asked direction of a cop who like a big Irish Boston cop with his, he's doing traffic, and he's got his little radio, and I can hear he's listening. I can hear him while I'm getting directions from him to go to the turnpike. I can hear John F. Kennedy, it's coming off of his little radio. So I think he's listening. And anyway, I get on the highway to start heading out there, and I pass the turnoff for the JFK Library, and you would get this, Enrique, that that's where you would go. You would go and interview people. Get your sound bites. And I felt like I should go there, but of course I don't have a camera crew. I can't. What are you doing? I actually took the exit. I saw the people that looked somber and sat out in front, and I got back on the freeway, and I'm thinking, stop, you don't have a camera crew, you can't go. Just get to the Kennedy family compound. So finally I get to Hannesport, I get off the exit, and there's no sign that says this way to the Kennedy family compound. You're just in Hannesport. So then I have to pull over and ask people, and it was crazy. And I ended up asking a lifeguard on a beach. I'm trying to find the Kennedy family compound. And she says, oh, you're almost there. Go take this down the highway, down this block and turn left. And I noticed that she's got a little transistor radio and she's listening to the news too, because nobody knows anything about what happened to this plane. I finally get parked, and by now other satellite trucks are arriving, and and people are converging on this. And I get out of the car and I see this redheaded producer that I remember from the hallways of CBS News in New York, and she's running toward me. It was like a picture, one of those things, like a commercial. We're running because I just want to find out what my assignment is. It's Saturday morning. Am I doing something for tonight's evening news? There had also been talk on the phone about 48 hours. Like 48 hours is going to crash a piece tonight, and am I going to be on that? Or am I just doing something for Monday morning? And am I going to get to my daughter on the West Coast? So I'm just trying to figure out my assignment. And I'm running to her, and we meet, and she goes, here. And she hands me a microphone and a little earpiece, says, New York wants to talk to you. And, we've done this many times when you're out. They can talk to you through the control room. And you talk back through a microphone. It's going through a satellite, and they can tell you what to do or what they want you to do. So I grab this earpiece and I grab the microphone. And in my earpiece, I hear Dan Rather's voice. And Dan Rather, it's not the controller, it's Dan. And Dan says, and now let's go to the Kennedy family compound where Hattie Kauffman is standing by. And then I realized this microphone is there's a lens right there. I was on national television. I was on a break a news break where they break in, and I had nothing. I mean, basically I had, what did I have, Enrique? What did I have?
You are out of breath, that's for sure. And
I'm telling you, you're on right now. What do you say?
Hi, Dan. Well, I'm here in Hyannisport, and you just roll. You just go. You just, you say,
exactly.
And the people around the scene here are very somber, and you just wing it. You just totally wing it.
That's what I did.
You start looking around.
And then
Yep. Been there, done that.
Dan, down the beach, the lifeguard is listening to the transistor radio to learn the latest. In Boston, the police, even while directing traffic, are listening to get the latest. I mean, that's what you do. Right. You're stretching and you're winging it. And so I did a lot of dancing on my feet, not just that day, but for years and years and years. So it's very nice to just be here in this beautiful setting and paint pretty things.
How much more of that story did you cover? Did you end up spending the weekend there? Did you ever make it to your daughter?
Yeah, I was there but after pretty soon it was discovered pretty quickly that the airplane had gone down. So
right.
It was a few days.
Yeah.
So at what point did you decide to hang it up? That you'd had enough? And what was there an event, or are you just kind of like, I'm tired?
A couple of things happened. I was now at the end of my career. I was working in LA, out of the LA bureau, and because you're in LA, you're in the the heart of the Hollywood industry. And there came a day when I thought, I don't want to do this. It didn't feel. I felt I was smarter than it, basically. You may remember Anna Nicole Smith, and she had gone to the islands, the Caribbean, and is she coming back? And so she might be back. And there was like this, and CBS sent me up to her house to sort of like on a stakeout. And I pulled up, I've got a camera crew, I've got a producer, and then in front of me is a car from like Extra. And in front of them is a car from, Entertainment Tonight. Or, no, there was even worse, Star, and we're CBS News. There came a point where I didn't like what I was doing. Mm-hmm. And also, I think there came a point when they didn't like me anymore, because I had been on all the time. I mean, I was covering a lot of things all the time, and suddenly I'm covering less and I'm covering less and I'm getting less assignments, and it's sort of like someone turns down the volume on you. And it's like I'm disappearing because I wasn't getting assignments at the same time that I'm not really enjoying this. And so I think, and you know, I was a woman over 50, and you start to realize that in television news, for women particularly, the opportunity to be on television after a certain age is limited to maybe 3 people. You know, Barbara got to hang around until she was in her 80s. Diane. But it starts to shrink, and even with those big names, I was joking a little bit a minute ago with you, Matt, I think before we started, about how nice and soft your background is. So even with those at that age, there's a little background softness that starts to be in the I guess it's called a filter in the lens, and it's like, are you there? Because you're you know, the filter to filter out the wrinkles. And anyway, so long story, it seemed to be kind of mutual, and I'm not unhappy.
Yeah,
I don't miss it.
Now the artwork comes into your life. Actually, it's been there for a while, right? Painting.
Yeah, I always knew I could draw. I always knew I could do this. I knew I could. I didn't get a chance to explore it, again, because of that network news career where you never know where you're going to be. So you couldn't really sign up for a class. You couldn't have season tickets to anything, or, you know, undergo something that's going to happen once a week. And so it really wasn't until I was retired, and my last paychecks with CBS would have been 2012, and I started taking art classes, I think, at 2012. And then there comes a point where you question, or you have to answer for yourself, am I just an old retiree taking up a hobby, or am I an artist? And I think I'm an artist.
Well,
nice.
By what we are able to see behind you, you've got quite a bit of talent. Very, very nice.
Thank you.
Yeah, very colorful, very detailed work, trees, people, colors. But you know,
this one, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. Tell me about.
Oh, I was going to say this one. I don't know if you can see it. It's called Leap, and it just got accepted at the Edmonds Juried Art Show.
Oh, great. Nice.
So that will be like mid-June, I think, is that will be up there at Edmonds. And I was in something in Rancho Mirage this winter. And it started, I think that the real thing where you go, am I just a hobbyist or is it really happening? Was in like 2015 when I had, you know, Seafair has in Seattle, Seafair, the big deal. And every Seafair, there's a Native American aspect of Seafair, and they have a big powwow out at Daybreak Star. And they always have an image. And I happen to be the image for their powwow posters that they put all over the place. And I happened to be, I don't know why or how, but I heard about it, that, you know, submit images to be considered for this. And I had just finished, and it was my very first time ever painting a little Native American dance, not little, but it was a little painting, but it was Native American dancers at a powwow. I just happened to finish. So I submitted it, and it won, and it became the thing. And then that painting actually was shown at Wazoo. And then that painting sold right away. And then I thought, I might be able to be an artist. And at first I mean, a real artist. And I started to paint powwow dancers. And then I kind of rebelled against that because it seems so stereotypical. You know, you're Native, you're painting, you know, you're going to paint natives dancing. And so I purposely tried to do other things. In fact, you know how, I don't know if anybody even uses that word anymore, an apple, red on the outside, white on the inside, you know, like the Oreo.
Yeah, right. Banana. I know.
So I purposely painted an apple. Just to see if I was still alive and like say something, because and my apple sold. So so then I just thought, okay, I'm just going to keep trying this. I'm going to do different things.
Do you still do some native paintings, native oriented paintings?
Absolutely do. There's this great big dancer. See how massive he is?
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. Is the native dancer from a particular tribe, your tribe, or where's that from?
and I'm actually trying not to do that because I want it to be a universal theme. For instance, like the leap, to me, that's the name of that painting. It's not about, those particular children. It's about leaping into the unknown and having that magical day with the sun and the sky and the water. And there's something that's beyond us. And so I tried to do that with most of my paintings that have human beings in them, that it's not necessarily about that particular individual.
Yeah. What does painting give you?
It lets me unplug. I love it when I can paint and 2 hours or 3 hours go by and I didn't even realize the time passed because I don't know. I like to lose myself in it. I don't care for, I do have some abstracts, but this has been a hard kind of journey of discovering what is your look or your style, because I've always hated to be contained like that. So are you a landscape painter? Are you a portrait painter? Are you, like that houseboat is an architectural painting? I know one thing I'm not is a dark painter. Mine tend to be lively, and I think if there's anything I'm trying to capture, it's the joy of life.
Yeah, they're bright, they're colorful, they stand out. Yeah, they're striking.
Being a reporter or a network correspondent is, in the best of worlds, being a storyteller. And I've carried some of that with me into my art, in that, the story of this painting Leap, it's diving in with that confidence. That's what's happening in that picture. So I have a story in my paintings. I wish I could show you the one that maybe you can put it in the B-roll. It's these little girl dancers, and they're about ready to go in, and one of them has her moccasin foot raised, and so it captures the moment you go from standing to dancing. It's that little tiny coming to life was captured in that moccasin. And then that's telling a story in a painting. So I think maybe I'm still a storyteller, like a reporter, but it's on the canvas. And I feel good about that. I've had an art teacher say, no, you don't do that. And it's abstract, or it's like, it has to be whatever the viewer wants it to be, and not you're not supposed to be trying to tell them something. And yet I think I can't help it.
Right. Yeah. One thing that has stayed with us is telling stories of our community, our past, our present, our people. And
yes.
So you don't lose that. If anything, I think what's nice about now, since we're all retired, is that we have time to be able to do that, and to do it the way we want to do it, not anybody telling us it has to be done in 2 minutes or 1 minute or whatever. So
exactly,
there's a real freedom in that, I think. So,
yes.
Yes.
And that our stories get to keep changing. They don't stop at a certain point because you're not working, for instance, on King or PBS for you.
Right. Yeah.
So now that you've been away from it for a while, do you watch news, or do you even care about it anymore? Because news is going through a pivotal moment right now because of credibility, because of the internet, because of fake news, because of everything. The credibility of mainstream news has been called into question. I mean, where do you think we're at as far as journalism in this country?
I think we're in a very sad place. Credibility has been lost, and it has been lost largely because of the the businesses themselves. It's not just that a politician says fake news and points the finger at you. The New York Times itself, CNN itself, stepped into this, and I think the couple of things that have been really bad is has led to this lack of credibility. When things became 24/7 on the air with cable, you had to have something to fill the time. There wasn't enough news. Remember, I mean, I'm so young. We had 3 network shows, and that was it. Waited till 6 or 6:30 to find out the news. But now it became all day. I'm not even talking about online yet, just cable. And so it led to all of the opinion shows and the opinion panels talking about the news, as opposed to just give me the news, just what happened. Don't tell me what I have to think about it, or that I should be enraged about it, or that those are the bad guys. And you can flip on MSNBC and have a completely altered reality from the person who's watching Fox. And it shouldn't be that. It shouldn't be two realities. Instead, just what happened. Don't tell me what I need to think about what happened. So part of it was the cable. Next came the online 24/7 thing. I think having journalists have to go on social media and say what's coming up, and then journalists interacting. You shouldn't become the story. I think that has been terrible. Well, we learned the story is the story, and we're supposed to stay in the background. Not anymore. Now the journalists themselves are the story. So I think that has hurt the credibility. And I actually think instead of facing it, big organizations like the New York Times or the Washington Post have doubled down. They've become more partisan.
It's the almighty dollar, and
that's really what it is. Yeah,
the greed about it all, and trying to make the buck. And cable news is just bad for our democracy. How do you work to encourage young Native folk to even look at a career in journalism? Or because of the way it's changed, is that something that you don't do?
Well, I don't do as many speeches today as I used to do, but I have, traveled around the country and spoken to a lot of young Native American groups, either in high school or in college, and told them that this career in television is a natural, or in radio, or in print is a natural, because our culture is a storytelling culture. And it was the way that wisdom and tradition has been passed on, and through things like the coyote stories, the legends of this and that. And I try to tell them that it's not, it doesn't have to be intimidating, because all you're doing is telling somebody what happened. Now, I remember the first time I was on air, and I got nervous because the camera's like, or maybe it was a stand-up, or maybe it was the first live shot. I don't remember, but I got nervous all of a sudden of the lens. And yet, and I don't remember who gave me this advice, but somebody said, think of it as you're just talking on the telephone, and tell them what happened. You don't have to memorize. Again, I keep going to my little note. You memorize, I'm going to say this, and this in this order, because that's not natural. Instead, just look at the camera, tell them. And so that's one of the messages that I've given to young Native Americans. Another one is to do a little bit more, meaning it's not enough just to show up, and it's not enough to do what the curriculum is. You have to do this, and this to get an A, or this, and this to get a B. You do this, and this, and when you do that, that opportunities unroll before you and lead in directions you would never even imagine. And I know that happened for me. I know that I also made that happen at King by volunteering to do all those stories. If I hadn't volunteered, if I hadn't said, I'll work 4th of July, I'll work Thanksgiving, I'll work, whatever it was, I might not have had the chance to be on television and then be at that moment where I got a great thing and I could put it on my resume reel and I could send it to Good Morning America and I can get hired. It's every single time that you show up and do a little bit more, you don't even know how far down the road that has opened doors. And so that's a message that I have given. Yeah. I've also raised money for the American Indian College Fund. I was their MC for about a dozen years. And so I've done those sort of things. Right now, though, I really am not. I started about a year ago. I started saying no to speech requests because I feel like it's time for other people. I mean, I don't want to see an old person like me up on the podium.
it is a problem.
I mean, there's plenty of other people. Yeah.
Just got to get them out there. But you come from a family that is, talk about a kick-ass family. your sisters, well, your brother who's passed away a number of years ago, who was a tremendous artist and actor, and but your sisters, Claudia's in politics, Joanne, I know, was very active. Where did that come from? This, you bunch of overachievers. What was that all about?
Well, just only a couple of weeks ago, the Seattle Rep through Poncho Theater presented a performance of my brother's play According to Coyote. And, he wrote that play and he used to star in that play. He passed away decades ago, but so it was a new interpretation with a new actor. But it was a tribute to John Kaufman and what he did in the theater community here. I don't know exactly how to answer that, but somehow we all came out of that situation. And I think we inspired each other. I mean, John was the oldest, and he certainly was, an inspiration for all of us. And Claudia, who's the first Native American senator in the state Senate of Washington,
Right.
is the youngest. So the oldest child and the youngest child, and they're bookends of, I have to give credit to my mom. My mom told she was very strong. Where there's a will, there's a way, and I'm small but mighty. And she, you're going to go get an education no matter what. I mean, she pushed us, and so she deserves credit, I think. Yeah. And my dad also, he was there. He believed in us. He's the one who taught me to draw and to paint.
Look forward to seeing more of your exhibits. You have one coming up in July. Is that right?
I do, on the Olympic Peninsula in Sequim.
All right.
July 7th, in downtown Sequim is a Hattie art pop-up.
All right. Why not?
Well, thank you so much for sharing your kind of experience and knowledge with us. It's been great.
Yeah. Hattie,
thank you. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for what you do.
Hey, we're just having fun.
Yeah.
We're telling stories or letting other people tell their story. Hattie, thanks
so much. Thanks for telling mine.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks so much. Take care.